Thank you very much. What a great pleasure to be here. You know, I mean this when I say this. I have the greatest job in the world. I get to work with great people. I get to be around great kids. I had a chance to learn a little bit of beatboxing backstage from Dwayne. Every day is just another wonderful opportunity to continue a great journey. What I want to share with you today, though, is how I believe that you can change the world one person at a time. I want to focus on essentially four main themes. One is the power of mentoring and relationships. Secondly, are the pivotal moments that confront you, sometimes at inopportune moments, but they can change your life and they can change the lives of people you interact with. I want to talk about essential discoveries that I've received through those moments, and then I want to take a point of personal privilege, and I want to reflect on the future of education and where I think education is going and how you and I, as people of influence, can impact that. Let me start with a little bit of a background and tell you that I'm an unlikely candidate to be here today, to be a person of influence that folks might look at and say, you know, good opinion, or let's ask him. And sometimes I'm a little shocked at that because I grew up in New York. I went to a big New York high school. I was an unremarkable kid. I was not a very good athlete. I was an okay student. My parents didn't have a high school education. My dad's dream for me was to be a police officer and get on his bowling team and his softball team. In fact, my dad preached all the time, the mark of a successful man is a job with a pension. And that's what I grew up to do. So education wasn't a high expectation in my family. But I had teachers who tapped me on the shoulder. And they said education is important, and you could do more with your life. Now, I'm not dissing being a police officer, because most of my cousins were either police officers or fire department people. But what I learned back then is that with that power of a tap, we can do great things. And my father, in his infinite wisdom, having never been west of New Jersey in his entire life, convinced me to go to Doane College in Crete, Nebraska, sight unseen, 1 week away from the beginning of football practice. Now, I have to tell you, that might sound exciting to you. That wasn't exciting to me in 1972. In fact, I resented my parents for it. Now, let me tell you why. I didn't fit. I didn't talk right. I had to take remedial English because I didn't say my R's. Water, dollar, quarter, beer. All of those things caused me to kind of stick out. In fact, I thought in 1972 that I was multicultural education at Doane College. Because a lot of students, friends of mine, would be on the phone in the hallway and they would say, talk to my mother or my father and use your language. And they thought, how nice, he's going to school in a global place. And so it was a struggle for me at Doane College, and I couldn't wait to live up to the deal with my dad, which basically was you have to stick it out till Christmas, and then you can come home, and that was my plan. And then in October, some seniors showed up in my room, and they did the most unforgivable thing that you Midwesterners pull on New Yorkers all the time. They took me snipe hunting, and it changed my life. And so from there, I graduated from Doane. I told my dad. He was really excited now because he found out that with a college degree, I can come back and be a sergeant in the police department. And I said, Dad, I've got a teaching degree. I want to try 1 year. And my dad said to me, well, if you must. Well, 1 year turned into many years. And I began a journey as a teacher and a coach and a principal and a superintendent. And it's been just a great, great run so far. But what I've learned in the nearly 34 years that I've been involved in education, what I've learned is that the power of relationships is single-handedly the most important thing that we can receive and that which we can give. And that being a relator and developing deep relationships is much more than just a wanton conversation. It's a meaningful dialogue. It's about exhibiting care and concern for the person that you're working with. Because if it wasn't for those people in my life, I wouldn't be the superintendent of schools in Lincoln today. So mentors in my professional life that I want to just pay tribute to very, very quickly, two of them, and there's many of them, and you all are probably right now thinking about the mentors in your life. And I would urge you today, thank them in some way. the people who tapped you on the shoulder and helped you get where you are today. So the three that I would talk about, two were college professors. One was at Doane College, who worked with me and convinced me that I should be a teacher. On graduation day at Doane, walked up to me and said, teach for a while, become a principal. And I thought, I haven't taught a day in my life yet. What is he talking about? I never forgot that. And then when I was working on my degree at University of Nebraska at Lincoln, a famous professor that was here entered my life in just an unbelievably routine way. I wanted to be a driver's ed instructor. We had a young family. I was teaching in Wilbur, Claytonia, and being a driver's ed instructor was easy work, and it paid well, and you drove around in an air-conditioned car with good kids who were going to create lots of great stories for you to write a book someday, and I still want to write that book. But it paid well, and it was better than working at farmland for me. And I needed to get the class, my class schedule signed by an advisor. And I went to the University of Nebraska, and I couldn't find anybody in the PE department. And my friend who was taking classes in educational administration said, my professor will. I walked into his office. He swung his door open, steamy cup of coffee in one hand, cigarette in the other, typing 120 words a minute as we were talking. And he said, I'll sign it under one condition. You meet me in an establishment tonight at 5 o'clock. I had no idea what he had in mind, but I knew I had to go. A deal's a deal. And he said to me, you have to take one educational leadership class. That's the price for me signing. And when I showed up at his class that fall, it changed my life. I started thinking about influencing and impacting people on a higher scale. But the mentor, the most recent mentor in my life, some of you might know him, his name is Dr. Mike Neal. Mike was a former superintendent of schools in Grand Island and Colorado Springs, who when he first found out that he had cancer, he launched into a business, and his entire business and his entire life was about helping people realize and reach their potential. Mike's my hero, and he's my mentor because after 20 surgeries and finally succumbing on the 21st or 22nd cancer surgery, near the end, Mike Neal was still picking up the telephone and trying to encourage people to do great work in their life. I got to know Mike very well. He became a close friend. There's several in your room I know. I mentioned I was going to talk about Mike. They knew him as well. That's the kind of power of influence and the power of relationships that makes the difference in lots of people. You see, Mike touched thousands and thousands and thousands of lives, and I think everybody in this room has the potential to do that. So when we're coached up and we're mentored and we're excited and we step out into the world and we think about, so what do we do now? It's really about looking at our skills and understanding what we're good at and really developing those in a way that we can be ready when those moments in life present themselves. I call them the pivotal moments. It's the moments that we never planned for. It's the moments that happen spontaneously and quickly and rapid fire, and they're sometimes the most dark days of your being and your life. I want to talk about two of them because they changed my life and hopefully change, and I know, changed the lives of a lot of other people. The first was in Grand Island, Nebraska, where I was superintendent in 2006. Those of you that know Grand Island, back in the mid-2000s, it was a community in transition. It still is. A lot of immigration, big debate in the city, as well as a big debate with, throughout the state regarding the education of illegal immigrants. And we were struggling educationally, trying to provide educational needs for the students. And in 2006, in December, we were raided by federal immigration authorities. It literally brought the city to its knees. And one of the things that I remember when I received that phone call that something big was coming down in the city was that we didn't have time to think about it. We had to worry about 1,500 boys and girls who kissed their moms and dads goodbye, either that morning or that night, that now were going to be arrested and detained. And I remember thinking in those 20 minutes, we better have a reaction and a response quickly. And we need to get the people in the room who had the passion and the commitment and the desire and the skill set to make that work. I'm so proud of our accomplishments and the accomplishments of the people who I had a chance to work with, and even more proud of the community of Grand Island as it rose up and wrapped their arms around this devastating tragedy. One of the things that changed my life was a couple of weeks after that, and by the way, There was a real fear. It was very much like the Holocaust in Grand Island for a couple of days. Families were in fear that their children were going to be used to get to them. Our principals would go to doors and knock on doors to try to get kids back in school because we wanted them in school. We said school's a safe place. And we would see blinds open up, and then they would shut, and we wouldn't see any more sounds. And it took 2 weeks to get all our kids back. And finally, we were able to get that trust back where it wanted to go. And after Christmas, I was called to a 3rd grade class at Howard Elementary School. And it changed my life forever because I walked into this class where most of the students spoke Spanish as their first language. And this little girl presented me this poster. And it says, "This is Dr. Joel. He keeps kids safe." And I knew at that moment in my life and in my career that I had my purpose. And my purpose is kids. And my purpose would always be to do whatever I could, resources that I had, influence that I had, people who I was interacting with, to do the same thing. Our kids are the backbone of our democracy, and they're the future of our world, and they need us, and I knew it then. Second pivotal moment, a couple of years ago, Lincoln, Nebraska, coming off a first-year superintendency, feeling pretty good about things. Looking forward to the first week in June. It's a time when superintendents relax. And I didn't. And I remember the phone call, the second phone call, from one of my colleagues who said, "This is big, you need to get down here." And it was midnight. And I thought immediately to the raid in Grand Island in 2006. And I knew immediately that this was going to be an opportunity to be impactful. And I knew that the messages and the words that came from me that night and the next morning were going to be what people were going to cling to as they began that spirit of recovery. And I learned at that pivotal moment the power that comes from survival and the power that comes from commitment to rebuilding something, regardless of the circumstances. I am so proud of the LPS community and the professionals that I worked with. Everybody associated with our school district absolutely came together, and we said, school will open on time, and we're not going to skip a beat, and we didn't. And that pivotal moment for me reinforced that during tough times, we are defined by what we stand for. We're not defined by our degrees. We're not defined by our backgrounds. We're defined by what we believe in and how we message that. And I believe that strength comes from 3 things. It comes from purpose, it comes from passion, and it comes from commitment. And if we have purpose in our lives, we don't deviate from what's important, regardless of the circumstances. And if we have passion, people feel it and they sense it because they know it's true. And then if we commit to a cause, like kids, it's an easy selling point. So those were the pivotal moments that changed me. But what I've learned more about pivotal moments is essential discoveries. So let me share a couple of those with you. The first one is that we have to know our strengths and weaknesses. You know, back in the day, 20 years ago, it was all about work on your weaknesses, make them better if you want to be a better person. The research has changed. Make your strengths stronger. Don't worry so much about your weaknesses because, quite frankly, you can figure out ways to compensate from them. And that took me a long time to figure that out. There are things I'm really good at and there's things I'm not very good at. Secondly, power of relationships. It's so important, and you know that. But I want to tell one more story going back to Grand Island. This is a story of a next-door neighbor, a gentleman who was a good friend. We were politically opposite. He didn't believe that we were investing in the right things in public education. He was the first one to tell me that, especially when his property tax statement came in December. On the day of the raid, he was the first person in my office with a hefty check. And he made me cry that day because I looked at him and I said, "What is this about?" And he said, "This is about kids. I'm a dad too." And so what I learned as an essential discovery is that it is about kids. And it is about helping people. That's what we live for, is to provide service to others. I think you have to think big. As a person of influence, you can't settle for what happened yesterday. It's what's going to happen today and what's going to happen tomorrow. And we have to be futuristic in our viewpoints and in our visions. And we have to, as other speakers have said, we have to step outside the circle. I need to do that at least once. Because that is going to give us chances to be influential. So thinking big and realizing, as I look back at my father, I used to say to him, Dad, you never took the sergeant's test. Why? And he said to me, because I don't want to do that. He said to me, I'm perfectly content being the person on the street, helping others. And he taught me nothing replaces hard work. And you have to market yourself for success. And then finally, always, always remember to be a person of purpose. So, looking forward, point of personal privilege, that's me. We did a video, I pulled the plug and all the lights went out. I'm not a technological person, but I believe this with all my heart. The classroom that your kids and your grandkids are going to be in the next 5 years are going to be textbook devoid. Kids are going to have devices, teachers are going to know how to use them robustly, and we're going to turn lights on in ways in education we've never turned them on yet. And in Lincoln, we're working on that, and I think you're going to be excited with what you see. I'm also concerned that we have spent a lot of time in public education in America getting kids ready for college, and I think that's noble and I think that's good. But I also think it's time now to elevate career readiness as an option for kids who perhaps don't look at college. Thank you. As a viable option. We don't ever want to say to students or children, you have to do one or the other. We want to make sure that they can make those decisions. But we have wonderful opportunities in Lincoln. We have wonderful opportunities in America and, quite frankly, around the world for students who can connect themselves to their learning. Third, the school day and the school year absolutely has to be different. And I'm going to dedicate myself to that because that's hard work. Because what we do right now in 7 hours a day, as Jamie Vollmer wrote a book and did a video called Schools Cannot Do It Alone, what he's essentially saying is that when you think through the 1960s and 70s, everything that society has put upon us to solve as a social problem has been entered into the curriculum. But we haven't added a minute and we haven't added a day. And something's going to break. We're doing a disservice to our kids. I think all day, all year, preschool, early childhood, that's something that we're going to be launching in February. I think you're going to see more of that. And then I'll just close by saying this. I think it's time for action in education, and I'm hopeful that we will get there. So, every day is a gift. It's about giving back. Find a plan for tomorrow. Please seek out others. They won't seek out you. Touch their lives in ways that you've been touched out. And at the end of the day, ask yourself this: did I make a difference? And if the answer is no, wake up tomorrow and do it. If the answer is yes, you change the world one person at a time. Thank you very much.